about Jake, like this is speaking from my personal experience. When I got to play the last half of a preseason game, I knew I was going to dominate that son of a gun. Because there's a lot of dudes out there who don't play football, who aren't going to be playing football here in 3 weeks. And you can get after those guys. And I think there's a little bit of that going on. And I will say this team and the depth of this team also supports them at a really high level. Like that third string offensive line did a great job. The third string wide receivers like Bryson Tremaine, Tinsley, name your guy. Those guys are good football players that deserve a shot at playing in the NFL. They've got guys that are good around him. And usually that's not the situation with a third quarterback, so they don't look as good. But here that they did a great job of insulating him and supporting him, and he had a good performance.
I'll even put Fromm's name down over here in this other column as guys that we would like to keep on the practice squad, and we'll see 100%. How many we wind up with.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's a guy you want in your program, you want in your building. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that's what you want.
Ron's initial instinct was play Taylor for a series or two and then go to Sam. So you would have seen him. He just wouldn't have started the game, which, you know, look, Logan said at the time he understood it. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, Logan doesn't know what he's talking about. But it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And in just a moment, we will take you live to Ashburn, where the Commanders are talking about their 53-man roster. Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew at the podium. We'll tell you now, though, exciting news for us, streaming on YouTube and on Twitter. We're going to continue to expand where you can catch our stream. So more ways to watch the show. Very exciting. Anthony, are we good to go? Thumbs up. All right, let's send you out to Ashburn. Here's Marty and Ron.
He had to stay with you guys right now.
Oh, he really didn't practice last year. That's part of the problem. And so when you look at it for us, that's a rookie right there. I mean, this is a young man that's got a tremendous skill set. His physical traits are very difficult to find. And, you know, just getting an opportunity to practice this year completely was a good thing for him. And so again, we feel that this is a young man that has an ability, and we'll see how it grows and develops. But players like that are very difficult to find.
Ron, you've been through this many years. Does it get any easier when a guy walks into your room and you have to tell them that their dream is possibly over?
No, it doesn't. You know, and Martin can tell you as well, because, you know, getting cut's not a pleasant thing. You know, it's because at that point, yeah, you're right. It is over, or potentially could be over for good. So, you know, I try to make sure, you know, you give them a little dignity. You give them a real appreciative thank you, so they know that you appreciate the effort. And then we want to make sure that they visit their position coach, the coordinators, you know, and again, we want to make sure that, you know, we say thank you the right way.
Ron, center was a position that had a lot of attrition last year, cutting Tyler Larson and kind of only keeping two true centers. Mm-hmm. Is there, I guess, what went into that decision, and how comfortable are you with Ricky as kind of the backup there?
Well, I think the biggest thing more than anything else, right now. And, you know, as Martin stated, you know, this, you know, to the question, this is fluid right now, and we're not done with anything potentially.
Martin, what kind of growth have you seen in Sam, and do you feel like he's now the long-term answer to your guys' quarterback? I know we ask you that every year, but what do you
You see a lot of quarterbacks who are coming out the next year stand and watch. But he went out and put it on the line in front of everybody, threw very well that day. You can see the arm strength, the accuracy. He's continued that since we got him. We've seen, as I mentioned to you guys before, I know you guys only saw the one game, but we saw him throughout the entire process, from when he started here, rookie minicamp, through training camp and the season. So he's been exceptional. And the one thing I would say, the arm strength, like I said, the accuracy, the decision making. The one thing he does really well, I think, that's been sort of not talked about as much, is he has the ability to create things off schedule. When things break down, he has the athleticism to get out of the pocket, to find the guy down the field, or to scramble for a first down and make it happen. You saw that during the preseason so far, and a lot hasn't been talked about that, but he's really athletic. He's a really good athlete too. And the poise, that first preseason game, first 2 drives don't go well. I've seen guys go in the tank. He came out that third drive and showed what he's all about. So I have a lot of confidence in him, a lot of belief in him. I think we all do.
And Ron, you told Albert Breer that if you had kind of known maybe sooner, you would have liked to seen him earlier in the season. Was that realistic at any point, or is that just having the benefit of hindsight?
That's hindsight. I mean, that's hindsight. The thing that we did see, though, obviously, was his abilities, but we were also in the middle of a run. We were trying to get into the playoffs, and we had some things going our way. So the timing of it all was just hard for us.
Coach, you mentioned when you guys drafted Chris Rodriguez that he was someone that Eric Bieniemy had kind of asked for specifically, or kind of thrown his name behind. How do you feel like he's progressed from rookie camp to now, and then ultimately making your initial roster? Well,
I think Chris has done a nice job. He really has. He's a big physical back. He catches the ball well out of the backfield for the most part. He's understanding protections. He's willing to step up and stick his face in the fan. I mean, he's a young man that comes in and will hold his position, try to play stout, give the quarterback some time. So when you see those combination of those 3 things, of being able to run the ball, being able to catch the ball, and then protecting, that's a huge plus. And so he's done and grown with the things that we want him to.
And then, Martin, talking about draft classes, a lot of times we talk about scheme fit and whether a player was the right fit in a place. And having a new offense coordinator and offense to install, that can be a little bit tricky. How valuable has Eric Bieniemy's communication been in making sure you can bring in the right young guys for this new scheme?
Eric has been great as far as communication of what he's looking for, different traits at different positions. He did a really good job with his evaluations for our draft this year, and he's been helpful going forward. I mean, some of the guys that we picked up throughout the offseason, like Byron Pringle, who had been in Kansas City with Eric, identifying guys like him, guys like Gore, like Derek Gore. So Eric's really helpful to the personnel department, and he's really good evaluator, and obviously a very good offensive coordinator.
Martin, just staying with that, a lot of times that Chiefs offense, and even going back to the Eagles when you were there, Ron, fullbacks have been in play. What was the conversation like surrounding Alex Armah?
Yeah. Well, Alex has been a good player for us over the last couple of years. We've had good conversations about him. There is value with having a fullback, and again, a very fluid situation right now for where we are. I think we're carrying 4 tight ends right now. We'll see how that all plays out.
And then, Ron, just for you, considering what linebackers were when you were playing and over the years to now breaking camp with only 4 on a roster, how has that position shifted over time?
Well, I think it's kind of, you can almost equate it to what's happened to the running back. It's one of those things that gets de-emphasized because of the way the opponent or one side of the ball is playing the game. And with the fact that we play so much sub, I think we were the number 1 team in sub defense last year in total plays. I think the call or the need for more than 2 linebackers at a time, says to us that we got to look at different positions where we need more, and I think that kind of push for that right now.
Ron, overall, how do you feel about this roster, and how is that different maybe than it's been in past years?
Well, I feel very comfortable about it. I really do. I think we're deep where we need to be. We're younger. This is a pretty young roster if you look at the total numbers in terms of age. It's a physical group of guys. I like what we got on the offensive defensive line because of that. Everything starts up front, and I think that's something we kept in mind as we're finishing this roster up. We'll continue to think about those things.
Martin, how do you feel about the offensive line specifically?
I feel good about our offensive line. I feel, again, just to address what you asked, Coach, I feel good about our roster in general. I feel really good about our process, too, of how we got here. I think our coaches and scouts work very well together, a lot of collaboration, getting to the right answer. Everybody had one or two differences, but the key thing, I think, is getting to the right 53 and not necessarily who's absolutely right about their 53, but getting the right group of guys to win football games with. So I'm very happy with that. And then offensive line-wise, to answer your question, I'm happy with the guys we got in free agency. I think Andrew is going to be solid for us at our right tackle. Nick Gates has been really solid for us throughout camp. 2 experienced veteran players with a lot of skins on the wall. I think Sam made a seamless transition from right tackle to right guard for us. Sadiq has had his best camp since I've been here. Physical, the guy's athletic. He can get to the second level. He does a lot of really good things. And this has been the best that he's played since I've been here. So we're excited about that. And then Charles Leno, consummate professional, left tackle, Iron Man, knock wood. He's always there, always steady. Does a really good job for us. I feel good about the group, and I feel good about our depth, too. We got guys like Chris Paul in our depth, guys like Trent Scott in our depth. So I feel good about the guys we have backing those guys up as well.
I guess for both of you, keeping 11 on the defensive line, what went into that decision, and did it force you to adjust at other positions to be able to keep as many?
Well, again, as Martin said earlier, it is a group position that we really feel we have to be strong at. We really like the 2 young guys a lot. They came in, they had really good camps. And I think going forward, more so than anything else, it's also got a lot to do with, the fact that we've only kept 4 linebackers.
And then with the receiving corps, how much did the bottom of that group fluctuate throughout preseason camp as you're really trying to figure out which guys you want to keep?
Yeah, there was a good mix of young guys in that group. It probably was the best group of undrafted free agents that we've had since I've been here, as far as the receiver group. And guys that we let go that we think, belong in the league somewhere. So we're excited about developing the guys that are on our roster now. And, again, very fluid situation, so we see how it all plays out.
Ron, just real quick, you talked about trying to put together all the right pieces around a quarterback and then get the quarterback in there. Do you feel like this is the best situation for a quarterback since you've been here?
I think it is. I think, the one thing that you never know is until you start playing, for sure. But with the things that we've done, the way we practiced this year, going to Baltimore, doing the things that we did during those 2 scrimmages days, and then the games that we've played the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of confidence, and we feel good about where we are. Again, it's one of those things that you just got to go out and see what happens, and that's where we are. We feel really confident. We feel good about the playmakers that are around Sam as well.
Ron, because of the work you said, do you feel like you know more about this team going into the season than the last couple of years?
Yes. That's something, and one of the reasons why we wanted to scrimmage, and we were trying to find a scrimmage partner, and just we were hoping to do 2 of them, to be honest. But we couldn't set one up for the first week. So the second week we were able to set one up, and we were all fired up for that one.
Ron, I know you don't have to talk about injuries yet,
Yep.
but with Chase, you have that. Is there anything you can share on?
We're not gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about where we are right now. We're going forward with this right now. This was a good day. We had a good practice, and we had it was a very good practice just because of the fact that we only had 53 guys out there, and you didn't have the practice squad.
Because it is fluid, though, with Darian Mathis,
Again, we're not going to get into those types of things right now because, as Martin said, everything has to be fluid.
Yeah.
The new rule changes this year, the third quarterback, the kickoff rule, did that influence any of your decisions for the roster?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Coach, what's the day after this day like for the team in the locker room and practice?
It's usually sluggish, because there's a lot of guys that you say goodbye to, and then you go out and it's the 53, and those guys have to practice against each other. But one of the things that I think helped us was that yesterday we cut a number of guys, and for the most part, those were the guys that we weren't going to bring back. The guys we cut today, predominantly most of them, we're going to try and get back, obviously, because of the practice squad rules and all that. So I think that makes it a little bit easier. So transitioning into practicing today was a lot easier for our group, I believe. It really was a good practice, too. It was a fully padded practice. We had everybody that could be out there was out there, and they were geared up. And it was fast paced. We finished about 24 minutes early. But the tempo was really strong. That's one of the things that we've done all year during training camp. Our tempo has been really quick, and we got a good stretch of the legs out of it. Cool. Thank you, guys.
All right, that is Ron Rivera, Martin Mayhew, live at the podium in Ashburn here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we'll react to the Commanders' 53-man roster being named. A couple of surprises for sure, but we'll see what we think of it. How did we do, by the way, on our roster projection? Actually pretty good. Probably a good reason why. It's had some pretty good insight into what they were thinking over the course of time. And I think Ron just revealed a couple of other things, too, that were interesting. So we'll dive into it all. It's Cut Down Day, and you're listening to the Analysis and Reaction live here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And you just heard from Ron Rivera live, Martin Mayhew as well. 53 is here, and we've got a couple of surprises, but ultimately what I think is that by Friday, certainly by next Monday when they start practicing against Arizona, we're going to have probably 52 of the 53 players correctly projected based off what we did yesterday on the show. Not that that's what that it's about, just to prove that there's really not that many surprises, even if there are some initial surprises. To me, the biggest one. Well, first of all, let's get through the highlights first. They kept the 2 quarterbacks as anticipated, 3 running backs as anticipated. They went 4 tight ends instead of 3, and Alex Arma gets cut, but they've already hinted that they're going to bring him back, assuming that he clears waivers, which he will. They went 9 on the offensive line, which is both surprising and not. The Braden Daniels thing yesterday, I think, made that interesting, but ultimately they replaced him with Trent Scott, and they cut Tyler Larson, who they also anticipate bringing back. So I'm curious, what are the 2 moves short-term IR-wise that they're looking to make where they're going to make room for Arma and make room for Larson? But, that's the path they choose initially. They also did keep 9 O-linemen initially last year, which is something perhaps that got overlooked because traditionally everybody keeps 10. They went 11 on the defensive line. Last offense. They went 7 at receiver. That's kind of the big surprise is Mitchell Tinsley ultimately does wind up making the team on top of Dax Milne and Byron Pringle. So they go 7 deep at receiver. Very curious to see if that stays there or if there's a short-term IR for someone at the receiver spot, and whether that's Milne or Pringle with some kind of, I don't want to call it phantom, but kind of phantom injury, or Tinsley himself. Does he have an injury that he picked up late in the game that they can stretch out over a couple of weeks? Or is the news on Terry way worse? That would be the obvious worst outcome, is the news on Terry is actually way worse than initially thought, and he's not going to not just be ready for week 1, but might not be ready for a couple of weeks, and they short-term IR him. So that is the big question for me as they go 7 deep at receiver. Defensive line, 11. That's what we anticipated. They do it. They make up for it by going with 4 on the linebacker spot, and then ultimately the 10 defensive backs. So, Anthony, if we look at our projection from yesterday, we got 25 out of 25 correct on defense, right? Literally got every single person?
Yes, sir.
And then once they shift around Arma and Larson onto the roster, I don't know, like Hodges, Tinsley. Hodges is the one that we miss. Tinsley's the one that we miss. Mm-hmm. That I would say you anticipate Big Phil is going to be one of the 2 guys that goes to short-term IR with the calf injury. My question is, where's the other guy? Who's the other person that's going to go to short-term IR? And then where does that leave you offensive line-wise? Or do you keep Curtis Hodges for now because you think someone would snatch him up, but if you wait a week, people are going to be more set, less likely to do that, and you bring Arma back on the practice squad and you do a little switcherooski of those 2 towards the end of next week. Like, there are ways to do this and finagle it, but at the end of the day, I am curious where that other roster spot is coming from. Assuming that they bring those guys back to the practice squad, or do they just run with it this way and say, hey, if we need someone, we'll bring them up on a game day off the practice squad, and we'll do what we got to do and bring someone back on a Monday. But all in all, like, this is absolutely what we expected to see from this team, and I think it's a well-built roster that, for the most part, with Curtis Hodges being the exception, a high-talent, high-potential exception, the right guys, based off what happened, made the team. Maybe Larson and Hodges, the 2 exceptions. Hodges didn't perform well enough to make the team, makes it based off talent and potential. Larson played well enough to make the team, but just gets caught on the wrong side of a numbers game and the fact that he's 32 years old and the 3rd center.
Yeah, I think the Arma Hodges switcheroo is a little interesting just because I think had Hodges had to go through waivers, I think he could have made it just based off his performance.
Yeah, why would anyone else have watched him and been like, I'm going to pick that guy up?
Exactly. So I don't know if Hodges is the guy. I mean, I don't know where the other spot is. I think Hodges is an interesting one. But you also, I mean, for some reason, Danny Johnson's just always in my head. But you said you saw him,
Well, he was running around,
yeah.
but you can run with a shoulder injury.
Yeah. So
and then the other one is Chase.
That too.
like, is Chase dealing with something? Did the tests come back that are scarier than we initially thought? And is this stinger that Ron initially thought was going to be 3 to 4 days going to wind up being 3 to 4 weeks?
Yeah. I don't know. But my best guess would be the Danny Johnson, and then maybe the Terry thing, isn't as serious as it's more serious than previously thought. But I'm hoping it's not. But if I had to, pick two people, it'll probably be those two.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going to come from. Big Phil is the obvious one that gets you down to 10 D linemen. Lets you bring Larson back, and then I don't know. I kind of think you just put Hodges back on the practice squad because wasn't he? He was an undrafted free agent, right? It's not even like he was a draft pick last year. Was he a seventh rounder? But I don't know. Like to me, you have a more intriguing long-term project to tight end in Armani Rogers. Unfortunately, he's hurt, and you obviously do not know how he'll come back off an Achilles injury. But he's got a year plus until training camp because he hurt it in the spring. So it is. I don't know. It's curious. I also think Hodges underperformed in the games, and perhaps they've liked. And I don't think he had particularly great practices, but you did see flashes, right? Like, he'd be wide open and drop the ball, which means you get a plus on the route running.
Yeah.
It means you get a plus on understanding your assignment. You're in the right place. You just ultimately have to come down with the football. Pretty important part of the game, obviously, but there is a lot there. And as a run blocker, he is willing, and he got better as time went on. So I think it's a really intriguing decision. And then with Tinsley, it's like he did catch some punts in practice. So do you now give him a shot as a punt returner? They were so invested in Kaz Allen.
Yep.
He gets axed today. Or do you just throw Dax Milne back there as a safety and say, hey, we're good, and Tinsley is inactive on game day? Like, I don't know. That's the thing about certain positions that when you keep a guy, like, what's his role? And this is, by the way, why I have no issue with them cutting Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm doesn't have a role on game day unless things go completely sideways. And while, yes, getting him on the practice squad would be great in case that happens, that if you have to, for a week or 2 weeks, be down to your third guy, then it's great to have him around. Or even if you were to bring in a veteran to play over him and he can help in the meeting rooms and on the practice field, like, he's great to have around. But at the end of the day, like, that roster spot was way more valuable to spend on a guy who has a much higher potential of playing than your third quarterback. So especially when that third quarterback, as much as a lot of people are like, oh, there's no way he'll make it through waivers. He's Jake Fromm. He's going to make it through to waivers. And if he doesn't, you can find another guy as good as Jake Fromm. You just can't. So it's an interesting roster build. The 7 receivers is pretty fascinating. It's not the first time I've seen it. It's not the first time I've seen it here. But it is something that it leaves me with some questions as we head up towards game day. Like, who is the punt returner? I'm guessing it's Dax Milne, but could Mitchell Tinsley all of a sudden be the guy that's back there? Does he work his way into a rotation? Is he active? Who's active? Who's inactive on game day? What's Larson, and who's the guy, or what's Larson's spot? Is he inactive? Probably. Who are the guys that they ultimately can get to practice squad? I thought that was one of the more interesting things Ron said, is like, the guys that got cut today are the guys we want to bring back. So if you look at that, like, Milo Eifler gets cut yesterday, a guy who's been around and been on practice squad. A guy or like Aaron Montero, same thing, been on practice squad for this team before. Those two guys get cut yesterday. I would have thought they were prime practice squad candidates. Instead, looks like they'll be looking for homes playing football somewhere else. So there's those kinds of things that I think are pretty intriguing as well. as you build out this team. But ultimately, like, it's funny, we spend so much time this time of year on all this stuff, and then we don't talk about these guys again until the spring. Because Terry and Jahan and Sam and Charles Leno and John Allen are the guys that are playing, not these end-of-the-roster guys, unless something goes wrong in terms of an injury or whatever else. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We get back. What do you make of the roster? Anybody in particular that you're excited for? Anybody you're upset about? Hit us up, 301-230-0980. We take your calls next here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube and Twitter if you want to watch the show at the Team 980. I believe Twitter's actually just at Team 980, no the, but on YouTube it's got the. We got to, Anthony, we're just going to have to start just hoping people know where we're streaming live, because we're going to be continuing to add places where people can consume the show, and it's going to become less and less efficient to say. So I can't be like, Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and this, and it's at this here. Just find the place to watch us, and know that you're watching there, and we appreciate you. And if you're there, know how to get back. If you stumbled on us accidentally, make sure you pay attention to which road signs you're at on the way out, so you can reroute the directions back to us the next time you want to watch or listen. That's all. That as efficient as I can say it. We good on that?
Yeah, I think so. Whatever floats your boat.
Okay. I don't think we're streaming boats. I don't know.
I'm just saying, like, if YouTube is your thing, if Twitter's your thing, if, all these other platforms.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Fair enough. Okay. So yeah, we're streaming in all the places, including on the free Odyssey app. We also have what we like to call the Ace Law listener line. It allows you to get in touch with us. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. The Ace Law listener line. In a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Who you happy for? Who you surprised or bummed about that gets cut from the Commanders' 53-man roster is done and dusted. Let's get things going with Lap. Lap, what's up, man? Thanks for calling. Get us going here on a Tuesday.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Man, I'm so happy for Tinsley, man. That boy worked hard, man. I was disappointed with Fromm and Patterson, of course. You know, I wish we had a way to figure out how they can get on, but they still got a chance for the practice squad. Hopefully they get it. Dax, man, I don't like him. I don't even know how he got that last spot. I guess because he's a veteran and, you know, whatever, but I'm not impressed with him. And then he doesn't do well on punt. What does he do, punt or kickoff returns or both? But whatever he does, he doesn't even do a good job on it. So,
all right, Lap, thanks
I'm
for the
not
call.
impressed.
Yeah. So a couple guys mentioned there. I'm really happy for Mitchell Tinsley. I didn't get a chance to talk to him at all in camp. I don't know him at all. I know he's boys with Dotson, Penn State, whatever they're feeding those receivers at Penn State. Like, good job to the receivers coach there. Big Ten receivers, man, got a couple of really good ones. Ohio State's just churning them out at an absurd rate. Obviously Penn State as well. But meritocracy, when it happens, is cool to me in the NFL, when it's just like, this guy played his way onto the team. He has no business making it, but he deserved a spot, so we're giving him the spot. I love that, and that's what Mitchell Tinsley did. With Fromm, there's no need to keep him. Like, you can get him to practice squad, great. Patterson, he gets hurt by not playing teams. Because here's the other thing. I thought that was interesting today. One of the more under-the-radar moves is they put Jonathan Williams on IR, and all the reporting is that Derek Gore is likely to be the practice squad running back. Came in, just did exactly what EB wants. That dude ran hard every single time, every single rep. If he got a rep, he finished it no matter how many times he was quote-unquote tackled, because it's training camp and you don't actually tackle. He ran to the end zone full speed. And he made a couple of plays in that final preseason game. I think Patterson's a good player, a great dude, been around for a hot second. But I think EB trusts Gore. And so Gore's going to be the practice squad guy. And I think Patterson, as a guy who was cut yesterday, is going to be looking for a new home in the NFL. And obviously will hope to sign on with a USFL or an XFL team in the spring and see if he can prove it in a game that he should get signed somewhere, because he has performed well when he's got chances, but doesn't play teams and is a limited role guy. And that's hard to be as a backup. It's one thing if your limited role is starting running back. When it's backup running back, you got to be able to play teams, and that was never an area where Jared Patterson showed that he could be helpful. And that's the unfortunate reality. With Milne, here's the thing. He is reliable. He is not explosive. He is not dynamic. But there's a lot worse things you can be in the NFL than reliable. He is not going to run the wrong route. He is going to generally make the catches to him that he should make. He did have a drop in the previous game. It was a tough catch, but he should have made it. But generally speaking, he's not going to drop a lot of balls. And he will reliably catch punts. Unfortunately, he will reliably go nowhere with them. They should find a more dynamic returner. There actually are a lot of them available. There was a couple of guys cut today across the league that have extensive punt and kick return experience. There was a guy from Cincinnati who got cut. The Eagles cut a couple guys. So I do think there's a possibility that this is a fluid situation that continues to evolve. And I think also that Kaz Allen could eventually wind up on the active roster down the road. So these things are fluid, but if you're like, oh, man, I don't like Dax Milne, and all he does is his job, that's the NFL sometimes. 301-230-0980. Let's go to John. John, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
So, full disclosure, I have something in common with Kaz, Logan Paulson, and Doc Walker, so maybe I'm a little more in tune to Kaz Allen than the average Washingtonian.
Just for those that don't put it together, John, that means John went to UCLA. That is the common theme there.
Yeah, didn't play tight end or receiver there, but walked the campus. I'm shocked. I guess it's more a commentary on the NFL and then just the Redskins, that these electric speed guys that have shown that they have good hands and that they can basically run away from anyone with just a little space or a foot in the ground somewhere don't stick on these teams more often. Like it makes you wonder what they could do more to make a team. You know, it goes back to even like Ted Ginn, who was just always jumping from team to team to team to team. And you never understood why, you know, almost every time the ball's in the air, there's a potential touchdown happening, yet they don't end up in the league.
So there's a problem with your there's like some Bruin, baby blue colored glasses happening with the analysis though, John. And that's that Kaz Allen dropped 3 balls in his limited preseason action over the weekend. Like he had two potential first down catches that he dropped. He had inconsistent hands all throughout camp, and he muffed a punt. And so I do think that, yes, I'm assuming he was far more reliable in college. I have not watched as much of Kaz Allen at UCLA as you have, that's your alum or your alma mater and the whole deal. But it's a different speed at the NFL level, and the ball is coming in faster. The spaces are closer. It is harder to catch at this level than it is at the college level, where there is just space upon space upon space. And that pressure is enough to mess with certain guys. And I do think there is something to the idea of a practice squad and letting a guy grow, and or having a more serious discussion about developmental leagues for the NFL and finding ways to like field, other games, if you will, like reserve squad games almost, to try to get these guys more action and more game reps. But just being a good athlete doesn't do it at this level. You have to be able to complete the fundamentals at NFL speeds and pressures. And the other thing is you have to be incredibly intelligent when it comes to the offenses and where you're supposed to be and the routes you're supposed to run and all that stuff. And I think, I don't remember specifically with Ginn, but that he was a pretty limited route runner. And so that might have been a part of it. But I also, I don't want to be obtuse about this. The guys who can score from anywhere, like, that's super valuable too. So I get the point, but at the end of the day, like, you can't score without the ball. Securing the ball is the first part, and for Kaz Allen specifically, that is why he is not currently in the NFL. All right, that's John. Thanks for the call. 301-230-0980. All right, we got a couple more calls lined up. We will get to those immediately following the break, but we also have a couple of lines open. We have a lot of phone lines, so a couple more open. Get on in. Who you excited for? Who you shocked for? Who you bummed about? 301-230-0980. More of your calls next on the Ace Law listener line, but first, a look at what's trending.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
Obviously, cut day around the NFL, and exciting news out of Buffalo. This wasn't exactly something that was unanticipated, but Damar Hamlin officially makes the 53 for the Bills. Hamlin, of course, had that terrifying incident where his heart stopped on the field last year, continued to have his recovery, has been a full participant in all of Bills training camp, and does make the roster as a backup safety. Bills will be without for the first 4 weeks, though, Von Miller, and that includes their Week 3 game against the Commanders. Miller staying on PUP as he recovers from an ACL injury last year. Also on the PUP list, Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. Indianapolis does not find a trade partner, and whether they do or not, Taylor now out the first 4 games of the regular season. Yankees make a move today, cutting Josh Donaldson. He's having a career worst season. The former MVP candidate with the Blue Jays, been playing in New York and playing very poorly since he got there. They move on. U.S. Open tennis today. Jessica Pegula, Ons Jabeur amongst the top seeds to advance on the women's side of the draw in New York. Pegula doing so in straight sets, as did fellow American Madison Keys. We'll give you some updates on the men's scores coming up in the next What's Trending an hour from right now. I'm Craig Hoffman. That is what's trending here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. My guy Michael Phillips will join us at the top of the hour. Still doing some freelance work for the AP. Still active in the game. And just because the Richmond Times-Dispatch stupidly decided that they didn't need a sports center anymore or sports editor anymore doesn't mean that Michael doesn't still know everything he ever knew about Washington football. So I'm excited to have Phillips back on the show in just a few minutes. All right, taking more of your calls on the Commanders' initial 53-man roster. 301-230-0980, of course, the phone number, 301-230-0980. That is the Ace Law listener line. Who are you shocked made it? Who are you upset about? Who are you really happy for? Let's go to Terrell. Terrell, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Man, I can't say that I am, shocked at anything, but, I get Kaz Allen playing himself out of a position, and, right now you don't really see a lot of kickoff returns anymore, so it's like if I can have somebody back there that I can trust, like a Dax Milne, that can field the ball, get down, fair catch it, and keep it moving, then I get it. He's not a flashy guy, but I get it. Holding forward tight ends, But I get it with injured Logan Thomas. You got to keep Hodges, who for me didn't flash in game. Maybe he did during practice.
Not really, but
and you can get a run.
Yeah.
And you can get a running back off the street. So, I mean, not keeping Jarrett, I get it. So, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really see nothing crazy. I would have loved to see maybe an extra linebacker for depth, but I guess that position isn't weighted as heavily in our defense. And with those extra safeties and somebody playing Buffalo, I kind of see it. So we'll see how this roster shakes out during the season when, like, mid-season injuries take place. But other than that, I can't say I'm mad at the roster.
No, same thing. I appreciate the call. And, you know, the linebacker thing is interesting, and I think there's a couple of points to be made there. One, the fifth linebacker is typically a special teams player. He's typically active because he's a special teams player. And a guy like Dejon Harris would be very helpful there if you needed him. But they don't need him. And I touched on this a little bit yesterday. Logan said it better than I did on Take Command, and he says this from personal experience. I have never played NFL special teams, although I have watched a fair amount. But if you can have two really good gunners and like two or three other really good special teams guys, you don't need 11. Like, you need 5. And especially with you got Tress Way punting and Joey Sly kicking the ball out of the end zone on kickoffs, we're really talking about punt coverage. Well, on punt coverage, Christian Holmes and Percy Butler are about as good as it gets as gunners. And then Jeremy Reeves as the personal punt protector, who flies out of there quickly and is essentially like a third gunner, was literally the all-pro special teams guy last year. So there's 3. I said we needed 5. David Mayo is a special teams monster. He's been playing it forever and is very good at it. And, oh, God, I'm missing one more. Khaleke Hudson, the other linebacker, obviously. Khaleke is a great special teams player. He's really, really fast. He's a sure tackler, all that stuff. So there's your 5, and they all are, guys that are going to play for you but aren't starters on defense. Then, on top of that, okay, well, we didn't go for the usual 10 linemen and have that 5th linebacker. What about those linemen? Can they play teams? Well, who was the one guy who made the play to down a punt inside the 5-yard line this preseason? That was James Smith-Williams. He'll start on teams for you. Casey Tuhill will start on teams for you. Andre Jones Jr. can play teams and played it very well in college. So he might even be better than those other 2 guys because he runs so well. So they've got the special teams side of things covered, and they've got guys like Gore on the practice squad from running back, assuming that he makes it there, that have played special teams in the past as well. Some of their tight ends have played some teams for them. So I just don't think that the usual need for a 5th linebacker from the special team side is as dire. And then obviously at the actual linebacker spot, it's also not very dire because this team doesn't play 3 backers almost ever. They play 2 or 1 if they go Cinco and 1 plus, a Buffalo or whatever. But a guy like Quan Martin and guys like Cam Curl, who are bringing incredible physicality down into the box from a safety position, are essentially playing linebacker. And so there's just not a need for a depth at that position. And Dejon Harris is going to be a guy who makes it through on waivers to practice squad for you. And then I think the other thing, too, that should be mentioned is, generally speaking, linebacker play in the NFL is not really – there's not a bunch of great dudes out there. There's a lot of replacement-level players. And so because that's the case, like if you have to go sign another guy who can run and tackle – it ain't going to be that hard to find a guy who's not a huge drop-off from your current backups. It's just a de-emphasized position not only here but around the league due to a variety of factors. Now, if you can get a great one, you get a Fred Warner, you can change your defense. That's certainly what they're hoping Jamin Davis can continue to evolve into, a guy whose speed, power, and range can really help make this defense even better than it already is. But realistically, like you don't need that 5th linebacker. You always want stuff. You want a 3rd quarterback. You want a 5th linebacker. You want this. You want that. What do you need? To me, that's how you build a roster. All right, last call for now. We'll take more later. Let's go to Tom. Tom, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the part where you're on the radio, buddy. Got to get talking.
All right. Why, and you've already said it, but it's not worth it. Why is Dax Milne still on this team?
Why
he
would
offers
he not be
nothing
on this team?
Because he offers nothing in the return. We have not had a return man in 4 years.
Does he catch the ball?
All right, if all you wanted somebody to fair catch, then you can have Gibson do that.
No, you can't.
He can fair catch.
Otherwise, he would. Tom, let me ask you a question. Do you think Eric Bieniemy was a good investment for this team?
Yes.
Okay, so you think this offense could be pretty good?
You need all the weapons.
Answer the
that
question,
you can
Tom.
possibly get.
Answer the question, Tom. Do you think that this offense could be good and potent? You like Bieniemy? Do you like Howell? Do you like this offense?
I think the offense has potential to be very high in the ratings. Yes.
Okay. Well, then wouldn't it be kind of important to get them the ball?
It would be very important if we could turn a field now and then.
Sure, but it's less important than getting the ball. You have to catch the ball before you can do that. And unfortunately, look, thanks for the call. We got to go. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to find a guy who can do both. Is it a weakness in the scouting department? Am I like, should they have been able to find someone in the last couple of years? Absolutely. Should they have never let DeAndre Carter go? Absolutely. He's a guy that could do both. But to pretend like Dax Milne doesn't belong on the team is taking it a step too far. One, he's been reliable as a receiver. And by the way, if you want to see an offense get messed up, throw a guy out there who doesn't know what he's doing and runs the wrong route and brings a DB right underneath a throw, and you get pick six because a receiver ran the wrong route. Dax Milne should not do that to you based off of his abilities. So there is a lot worse you can do than a guy who will reliably do his job to the job description. He is not explosive. He is not dynamic. And yes, it would be great to upgrade, but he's wide receiver 6. Having a guy who is reliable as wide receiver 6, who can also reliably catch punts and make good decisions in the punt return game. He's not going to get you pinned inside the 5-yard line because he fair catches one at the 6 like Kaz Allen did in the game the other day, or inside the 10-yard line because you fair catch one at the 6. That is good. Is there room for better? Yeah. It'd be sweet if they got better. But right now, this is where they're at. And let's not pretend like, one, if there was a better option, they wouldn't have done it. And two, like it's an indefensible decision. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Let us talk to my good friend Michael Phillips next. He's been covering the team for, solid 10 years. So get his insight on what he thinks of the 53 before we get back to more of your calls here on the Hoffman Show. Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Scheduled here to catch up with our guy Michael Phillips. Phillips, I don't know. I don't think the phone number we have is dated because I texted him yesterday, Anthony, but we haven't been able to get a hold of him quite yet. What do we think Michael Phillips is doing?
5 o'clock. He might have just submitted his last whatever he's working on. If he's working on anything,
I don't know. I mean, he is doing some freelance work for the Associated Press. Perhaps that is happening. Maybe he's playing Wii with his kids, listening to the Odyssey app.
Oh,
if he is though, it means he's listening to Grant and Danny, or because they're simulcast down in Richmond. And not listening to us, in which case we're in a fight.
Yeah, that's problematic right there.
Yeah, we can't be doing that. Anyhow, anything for you stand out from this 53 that was surprising, shocking, upsetting, exhilarating?
I mean, nothing that you haven't already mentioned. Again, it is, a little weird when a team does end up keeping 7 receivers. It's not unprecedented, but you feel as though assets can be allocated elsewhere. And we already have a deep receiver room, so I think it was just that's probably the most or the strangest thing I would say.
Yeah. Okay, here's another fun question. What position, we know offensive line, they're going to do something, and Larson's going to come back. We know Arma's going to be back. We know, and we don't know, but we're pretty sure that, what's his name? Big Phil Mathis is going to go on IR. But what are the other position groups that we think we could see changes at? Linebacker certainly always in the equation. I wonder if the right punt return guy comes available. Do they do something with Dax Milne and all the people that are mad? Get to stop being mad because they have something. But we'll see. I see if you're watching on YouTube or on Twitter, you see Anthony answering the phone there. Does that mean old Miguel is ready to go?
That was not Miguel.
That was not Miguel. Oh, do we have just other random callers?
Yes, we do. We have
okay,
Greg.
we could take calls. That works. Is it Greg that I see on the call screener?
Yes.
All right, Greg, what's up? Thanks for calling.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, Greg, I really think you're a smart guy. I really enjoy listening to you, but I think your take on this Dax Milne thing is really missing it. Just to have a guy on your team that can field the ball is a 8-and-8 mentality. Just for him to take up a roster spot just because he can catch the ball, he can't do anything else. He's not electric, but he's completely taking up a roster spot is the reason why we only win 7 to 8 games. We are not aggressive in the special teams arena at all. We kick the ball through the end zone. We just want a guy out there that can just catch the ball, and that's why we only win 7 to 8 games.
All right, thanks.
And I mean, you had me living in the car, just on that tape.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna flesh this out.
Roster spot.
Greg, hold on. First of all, he does more than catch the ball. He can reliably play all 3 receiver spots, which for a 6th receiver is not bad.
In that receiver room, he won't see the field. We really got some talent. We got some explosion. He will see the field this year because someone's hurt.
What do you think a 6th receiver does?
Well, I remember us having 6 or 7 receivers in some years, i.e. a Maurice Harris or a Cam Sims, but because they're not on special teams, they don't see the field. You had inept substitute teachers like Jay Gruden who wouldn't play guys like that. And I think, Ron not really having the pulse on this team and understanding that we may need to steal some possessions to win more than 8 games. But just, playing this vanilla special team style of ball is not going to get us to the next level. And,
Greg,
and
another
point,
hold on 1 second. I'm gonna try to eventually get you to say something that's correct. But so far you're missing a lot. Because you might remember I was on the beat covering the Jay Gruden teams. I know because I was there. Maurice Harris and
Okay.
Cam Sims did see the field. They very
They did.
rarely got out there as blockers, which is exactly what Dax Milne will do. Or if they play extended snaps, it will be the same exact thing as Maurice Harris or Cam Sims because of injuries.
I disagree. Those guys are way more explosive. If you look at the top teams in the league, the teams that win 10, 11, 12
No, we're not
games
talking
a
about
year,
their
they're
explosiveness. We're
aggressive in
talking about
special
their
teams.
role. It would be he will only play receiver either in to give other guys a blow or if there's extended minutes because those dudes get hurt. And by the way, the guy that I would actually compare him to in terms of ability, in terms of will do the right thing and will try really hard and block his face off to the best of his ability, is a guy like Ryan Grant, who was Jay Gruden's favorite.
Oh, Ryan Grant was a mop. This guy reminds me of Mr. Irrelevant, the guy we drafted. He's a little bigger than him, Trey Quinn or whatever whatever his name is. But this guy is not. When you look at again, like I said, we got 7 going into the season. He's number 7. I said that he is the Troy Apke of offense. He's Mr. number 52 or 53 on this roster.
Maybe,
he's one of those
and that's
guys
fine,
that
but,
does
like, here's
one
the
or two
thing.
things really
Someone's
well.
got to be that
James
guy.
Thrash-esque. Say it again.
Someone has to be the end of the roster. Like, you realize that, right? Like, you're living in the car over a dude who might not be here by Thursday.
No, I'm living in a car on your take because I think most times you kind of nail it. But in this case, look, dude, I want to win more than just 7 or 8 games. I think
I
ED
would
can
love for
kinda
them
get us
too.
over.
My point is that the 50-second guy ain't going to be the difference in doing that. Now, I think you did make an interesting point, and like a point that I agree with, and I said it, that the aim should be higher. But they tried with Kaz Allen, and Kaz Allen ain't ready yet. So at that point, once you get to today and you're making the cuts, what are you supposed to do? Just be like, we'll figure it out later. No, you keep the best 53 you have right now. Dax Milne is unquestionably one of the best 53 that they have. Is that an indictment of them
Number
not doing
52.
better in the scouting department? Sure, fine. But that's not what you're saying, and that's not a decision that's been made today. The decision today is Dax Milne better than the other options available to them today? And the answer, without a doubt, based off camp production, based off the key catches he made for you in some big spots on third downs last year, based off of the fact that he can, yes, reliably catch a punt, which is something no one else on the team can say, the answer is yes.
No.
Greg's phone seemed to die there on us. You just hate to see it. His point and his phone died at the same time. Damn. I'm with you that I think if there is another guy available that signs on or that gets cut over the next couple of days that is a reliable punt returner, and especially if he comes from a place that runs a similar system and you can actually rely on him, or because you kept 7, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you bring in a punt returner and you just keep 7 active on game day. But the problem is like, well, Mitchell Tinsley showed a lot of talent at receiver. He didn't show a lot on special teams. And like, my question when I'm building a roster, if I'm a GM or when I'm even doing the exercise myself on this show or with Logan, is not what is a guy not. It's what is he, right? Not what I'm trying to do like a remix of the old JFK quote. Ask not what your country can do for you. Whatever. Like, what can he do? And the correct answer for Dax Milne is he can reliably line up and execute the assignments at every single receiver spot on your roster. And he can reliably catch punts. What can't he do? Yeah, be explosive and dynamic and whatever. But what can he do, Kaz Allen edition? Drop footballs and not reliably catch punts? Nope, Dax goes above that. And Dax has played on special teams for them in the past as well. What can you do? I don't know. Mitchell Tinsley, can you do that? You haven't proven it so far. Like, these are the kinds of questions that you have to have. Not like, oh, well, he could be dynamic if he gets to be wide receiver 2 because 4 other guys get hurt. Bump that. Like, that's not the question that we're asking here. The question is, like, what do you do if you make the team? Dax Milne has a role. The other guys do not. That does not mean that you could not find a better person for that role. But if your whole thing is he doesn't do a bunch of bonus stuff, You don't get the bonus points if you don't get the initial credit. Now I sound like a high school or middle school English teacher, and I hate it. But them's the breaks sometimes. We'll see if we can hunt down Phillips. We'll also take more of your calls next. So let's keep the phone lines going, whether it's the hotline or the listener lines, the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, and now on Twitter at the Team 980, Facebook, Twitch, hopefully coming in the next couple of weeks as well. So continuing to expand our listening and viewing options. Right now, Anthony, actually, I know we're technically 15 minutes late on this, but I say we fire up the fancy imaging and everything, so a few minutes late, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story, from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
All right, today it is our pleasure to welcome back to the show my good friend Michael Phillips, currently freelancing a little bit for the Associated Press. Phillips, just when you were out, we've pulled you back in.
And I missed the call. Unemployment is exhausting, man. It's very difficult. I was actually making tomatillo salsa in the other room. Lest you think I was off on some important mission. I most certainly was not.
Now I just would like some of that salsa, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
when is the next time you're up here, and are you bringing salsa?
Now we're talking. Next time I'm in the studio, I'm bringing salsa.
Okay, excellent. I will also be at the opener. I don't know if you're coming up for that, if Wino's assigned you the opener, but I am going to make my way over after the pregame show to FedEx Field, which will be the first time that I will have been at FedEx Field sans the Beyonce concert I went to a month ago since 2019 for an actual football game.
Were you at Rain Disaster Beyonce night or the other night?
Oh, no, I was at the first one. I was at the good night. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was not good. The Harris Group is trying to improve FedEx as fast as they can, but there are limits on what they can do, and the Sunday night Beyonce show showed all of those limits all at once. Even Beyonce couldn't make that an enjoyable experience for certain parts of the population.
You are correct, sir.
All right, so your initial reaction to the 53, surprised for anything? I guess I'll start there. Surprised for anything?
With the new rules, I kind of thought Jake Fromm might hang around just because they could leave him active on game days. I understand the need to go other directions, though. I think the defensive line was probably the most important to them. That took up the most space. Curtis Hodges, probably my number one if we're talking about players who surprised me that made the 53. I think he would have cleared pretty easily. I don't want to jump to the conclusion this means Logan Thomas isn't good, but it's certainly not a data point that trends us in a good direction on Logan Thomas.
Yeah, that's the other fun part of this is they've already kind of, whether it's leaked or more directly said, like they want to bring Larson back. They want to bring Arma back. It seems like Fedarian Mathis is definitely headed for short-term IR with that calf injury. But who's the other guy? Like, is it a Logan Thomas? Is Terry's toe worse than initially anticipated? And the other guy that I keep thinking about is Chase Young, because it seems like Ron's been a little bit snippy. Now, today he was snippy about every injury-related thing, but also he was asked about Chase first, so perhaps on edge about it. But he's been a little bit snippy when he's been asked about Chase these past couple of days, when it's very easy for him to go, Chase is good to go, and just clear the air.
There is no clear air when it comes to Chase. Chase is smoggier than Mexico City here. This is an issue and has been an issue for several years. And if he were just healthy and productive, all of this would get swept under the rug. Name your talented player on talented team. You never hear a bad word about them. And then when things start to go sideways, all of a sudden you hear, oh man, there's a rift there. Oh, there's something going on there. That's Chase right now. This has been developing for a long time. But the lack of clarity there speaks to the fact that he's a really important piece of this team. He's a very important role player here in terms of getting them to where they want to be. And it sure feels like everybody's not pulling this rope in the same direction, Craig.
Yeah, so the question is then what happens? We shall see. Michael Phillips with us here on the Hoffman Show. Let's talk about Fromm. I don't think we need to really entertain is Fromm actually better than Brissett crowd? Because the answer is no. But the idea of exposing him, he is good for a 3. He had a very good preseason, a very good summer. He's very knowledgeable. He's good to have in the meeting room. He seems to be a great dude that everyone gets along with, which is valuable when you're down the depth chart, especially in a quarterback room. What kind of risk are we talking about exposing him to waivers versus trying to keep him on the roster, knowing that really as long as he clears waivers, there's not that much of a difference except for him in the paycheck department?
I once famously declared no risk on Nate Sudfeld, and Nate Sudfeld then ended up playing for another football team. So you would think I've learned to keep my mouth shut when I don't know what I'm talking about, Craig, but here we are. I don't see any risk. If you're a team needing somebody, there's options. There's Will Greer out there. There's Colt McCoy out there. If you need somebody to play right away.
Colt came back. Oh my God! Sorry, Jake. We want Colt back.
That would be an all-timer there. Certainly, him running out of the other tunnel with his Falcons warm-up gear still on. I don't see any risk there in exposing him. And frankly, this is Sam Howell's show, or this is a new coach's show next year. There aren't a lot of in-between roads here. I mean, things go well and these guys come back, or if things don't go well and these guys don't come back, it's pretty stark, but I think that's the calculus here. And a new coaching staff doesn't care who your number 3 is. They're going to bring their own guy in. So I don't view that as essential personnel at this juncture beyond, potential injury danger and needing somebody. But that's a dark place to be.
Right. And so I am 100% with you that, like, if you lose Jake Fromm, it sucks, but whatever, you lost Jake Fromm. All due respect to Jake, who seems like a nice, hardworking young man. But it's just one of those things that, I don't know. There's fans that have been fans for long enough that you think we wouldn't do this every year, and yet here we are. Along those same lines, I know Anthony warned you, the uproar over Dax Milne making the team is A, warranted, B, stupid, C, somewhere in between.
Look, this team has botched the returner spot for so long, and I'm not critiquing Ron here like I'm critiquing the last 20 years. They just haven't handled that spot well, and so I think people get a little jumpy about it, and I think people get a little fired up about it. I understand you were a little fired up about it, and I get why people are fired up about it. Has Dax Milne ever done anything to impress you in any way? And I don't know. The answer to me is no, Craig.
No, and that's the thing. The answer is no, but he's also never done anything to royally upset me. And that is
correct.
Very different than a lot of the other returners they've had in the past where, like, at least with, like, Steven Sims when he was here, he had both. He had touchdowns, but he also had fumbles. And, like, yeah. I think what coaches – actually, let me ask it this way. Because this is like an interesting discussion of whether NFL coaches actually do know better than the rest of us, or whether this is an example of NFL coaches being overly risk averse. What is a bigger deal in a game? A lost possession on a fumble or a big return? Because I think this is one that they actually have right. Like, yes, if you score, that is massive. But the 40-yard return versus the fumbled punt that cost you possession, I think the heavier weight there is the lost possession, and thus a guy like Dax Milne, who's not ever going to fumble one. Oh God, if he does though, now my Twitter is going to be a disaster. But if he reliably catches the ball, like, avoiding disaster is actually an enormous net positive, and it's not exciting, so people get mad about it. But I think that is something that is appreciated by coaches and underappreciated by fans. But I'm willing to hear opposing views.
In a league where the rules continue to tilt towards playing that part of the game conservatively, they reward you more and more for doing so. I'll borrow a baseball term. Dax Milne is a replacement level player. There are other Dax Milnes out there. I don't have a problem with Ron Rivera saying this is not a part of the game where we're going to try to chase points. This is a part of the game. We're going to try to get a fair catch, get a 10-yard return, keep things moving after we get back from the commercial break. It's hard for me to get worked up about that. It is always hard for me to get worked up about the 53 to 54, roster discussion. But I think in this case, I would agree with you, Craig. I understand why people want more, but I don't know that this is an organization that I entrust to go deliver me more without botching it.
Right. And the last thing I'll say about Milne specifically is he was, to me, the best decision they could make today. Now, Cincinnati cut a guy that had a bunch of 20-yard returns last year. I don't know what his fumble stats are and why he got cut in Cincinnati, but if he could come here and be a returner, then okay. Like, if they cut Dax Milne tomorrow after noon and everybody clears waivers, they put in a waiver claim on a guy, whether it's him or, Devin Allen gets cut in Philadelphia, who's an Olympic caliber sprinter and has some experience. Greg Ward gets cut in Philadelphia. Like, if they go sign one of those guys and Milne gets cut, I am not going to cry over Dax Milne. And, like, that's the thing that I think people, maybe confuse is there's a difference between him being the best option today and the best option that existed ever.
And I believe a word that was used a couple times along the way was fluid. I believe it's a fluid situation, Craig.
That is true.
I would have no issues with them cutting Dax Milne tomorrow and bringing somebody in from elsewhere. I It still annoys me to watch DeAndre Carter. Like, they had that, they let that go.
Yep.
I would be totally fine with an abrupt change of position tomorrow.
All right. Last thing on the way out here. If they lose week 1 against this Cardinals team, fill in the blank.
Oh, geez. I mean, we're going to wish for a 12-game season, not a 17-game season. It's going to be ugly. Look, I like to see on the bright side of things, Craig.
Famously.
Here is my silver lining in that cloud. I think people are a little too excited about the new ownership group and a little too eager to turn the page, not understanding the hard work that will entail. Serving that glass of cold water sooner rather than later may not be the worst thing in the world. People go to FedEx. Remember that it's still FedEx. Remember that it still needs some help. And remember that there's a team that still needs some help. I don't know that's the worst thing in the world to get a little reset there, to have everybody take a deep breath and understand this was not a 3-month project. This is a 4-year, project organizationally, not on the field. They should be competitive, quicker than 4 years on the field. But in terms of organization wide, I worry that, a big win out of the gate might have people thinking we're good. And I don't think they are yet.
Yeah. I will take the facade of good as long as possible. I think that is good for business.
You and me both.
That is good for personal morale. It's good for civic morale. And if they lose, then I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. People shouldn't react to week 1. That is always the rule either way. Do not overreact to week 1. But, God, they should beat Arizona because Arizona looks like they are awful. They are so bad. I don't know that I can name 7 Arizona Cardinals.
Corralling the callers.
Yeah. Actually, pop quiz. Can you name 7 current Arizona Cardinals?
Probably not. I mean, obviously I'll get Kyler, but that's not all your Cardinals you can name have disappeared, whether it's Hopkins or Watt or, Fitzgerald. The name guys aren't coming. Yeah, name guys aren't coming to town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough.
I'll say this, though. Washington Nationals, I couldn't name 4 guys starting for the Washington Nationals tonight, but they're lighting it up.
There you go. Are the Arizona Cardinals the Washington Nationals of the NFL?
Hot take.
These are the tough questions. Michael Phillips reporting for the Associated Press. Hopefully some more fun employment announcements coming soon. And as long as he's doing some work, you'll hear him right here on this radio program. Michael, thank you, sir. Good to chat.
I appreciate that. Catch you down the line.
Sounds good. Michael Phillips, everybody. We get back. More of your calls, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. A look at what's trending, including some scores from the U.S. Open in about 10 minutes. We will get to some of the audio from Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew at the top of the hour. But for now, more of your calls on the Ace Law listener line. If you get in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. 301-230-0980 is the phone number here on this cut down day where we are streaming live on YouTube, and for the first time, but not the only time, just opening up the floodgates, if you will. We are streaming live on Twitter at the Team 980. All right, let's go to Robert in Fairfax. Robert, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show. Robert, going once, going twice.
Talent as receiver.
Okay, hold on, Robert. Robert, we haven't been able to hear you at all, so can you start over your call? Thank you. Maybe, Anthony, put him on hold and we'll get back to him. He seems to be there and very fired up, but the whole hearing him portion is rather important. So we'll see if we can get Robert back on the phone. We got him? Okay. Here, I'll let you put him through. All right. Take two. Ready, action. Robert in Fairfax, you're on the Hoffman.
All right. Sorry, Craig. Hope you can hear me. Yeah, so I'm a Dax Milne fan. He's sure-handed. He can come into a game completely cold, catch a third down pass, and go back to the bench. And that's all you want your sixth receiver to do. So I don't know what the other caller was talking about. I wouldn't trust Kaz Allen in that position. So Dax Milne, he deserves his spot on the team. Also, about Jake Fromm, his options are a lot more limited than you think. I mean, he spent the entire summer studying Eric Bieniemy's playbook. Why would he go to another team now to be the third quarterback and learn an entirely different system? I mean, it's not like he's going to go to Baltimore and back up Lamar Jackson and learn the option or anything like that. So, I mean, I think they made a smart call. So long as no team picks him up to an active roster, he's staying with our team. And then finally, those two quarterbacks that they cut, the ones with the really good names, Wild Goose and Castro Fields.
Yeah.
Totally happy with that. Those guys got burned multiple times last year. Anytime a corner got burned, I knew it was going to have Castro Fields or Wild Goose on the back of the jersey. So really happy with that call, too.
All right, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Glad we got the phone situation sorted out there. So on Milne, yes, that is, like, again, the point that I think is very, very important to make here is that dude is your sixth receiver. Not your first, not your second, not your third, not your fourth, not your fifth. He is your sixth. So if he can reliably come in, run the right route, get open on a key third down because Terry's gas and catch the ball, great. He's got 7 career targets. He's got 6 career receptions. His grade last year from PFF, like, it ain't that great. He's a 60.8, but okay, fine. Like, he's a 6th receiver. He's above 50%. Cool. Good enough for me. Wild Goose is a guy that I think was a lot better last year than people realize, especially in the slot once they kind of found a role for him. But ultimately, it's the same problem. Like, Rashad Wild Goose has a parallel problem to Jarrett Patterson. They are one-trick ponies, and they're not good enough at that trick to be one-trick ponies. Wild Goose, as an outside corner, unfortunately, just did not cut it. And they gave him every opportunity. I think they really wanted him to make the team because I think they liked him inside. But as Quan Martin came along, yes, he made some high-profile mistakes, to borrow a phrase from Jack Del Rio. But as Quan unquestionably got better and came along, that need dissipated a little bit. I think Danny Johnson also had a really good camp until Mark Andrews slammed him down, because I don't know why Mark Andrews slammed him down. And realistically, he did not show enough as outside. In fact, he showed very poorly at outside corner, and that's tough sledding. I think Tariq Castro Fields made some plays, both in preseason and in camp, but he also had too many plays made on him. And I think that percentage shifted a little bit more towards the plays made on him in games. And Logan told a great story on Take Command about how there's certain guys that are great practice players and then you get in a game, and it's too big for him. It's too fast for him. And there was a player he played with in 2012. He didn't say who it was, but there was some lineman who was killing it in training camp. And they thought, Logan's like, oh, that dude's going to make the team. And they get out there in the preseason, and he doesn't survive the first cuts because he had like 2 penalties, 3 missed assignments, goes the wrong way on a run, just gets his butt kicked on a couple of pass pro situations, and it's like, oh, well, when he gets out there in the game, it's too big for him. It's too fast for him. He can't do it. And I think for some of these guys, like, they can, I don't want to say hack practice, but sometimes it's that where, like, you just happen to be really good at guarding one guy. And if you can spend a lot of your reps on, let's say Tariq Castro-Fields had Mitchell Tinsley's number, right? Or Bryson Tremaine's number. And you just line up over that guy a lot. And, okay, you look really good. Well, now you go up against Baltimore and you have to face not Bryson Tremaine or not Justin Tinsley. He's a writer for ESPN. Mitchell Tinsley, wide receiver for the Commanders, made the club. And you're not going to look as good. So these are the kinds of things that happen as you get more information and you get more data. And I got no problem with that. We nailed all 25 of our defensive predictions because they were pretty obvious to me. The offense was definitely harder. Defense was really not that hard. The 11 linemen belong. The 4 linebackers belong. And the 10 DBs that made it should be the 10 DBs that made it. Beyond that, it's going to be, I think, a challenge to figure out like how to then supplement the roster. And, something that we talked about on Take Command, and actually we might play this for you later on in the show. Something that is going to be more difficult is the practice squad, because the practice squad, you are balancing like guys you want to develop over the long term with guys that you want to have as reserves, but you didn't have room for on the active roster. And building that becomes pretty interesting for this team. So actually, Anthony, I think maybe later in the show, maybe 6:30, we'll fire up a little Take Command action, and that will get us, because Logan and I did a practice squad prediction. So obviously this was recorded yesterday before we had the 53 today, but I still think it's interesting and relevant. So perhaps we'll do that a little bit later on in the show. Right now, though, we'll take more of your calls, 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. That next. First, a look at what is trending.
Here's
Yes, it is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. I am Craig Hoffman. You can follow me on Twitter at Craig Hoffman, on Threads at Craig_Hoffman. Then, because Threads, by the way, Anthony, I don't know if you know this. Finally, Threads is the Instagram version of Twitter that Meta, Facebook, whatever the parent company you want to call it, they're continually trying to just make it usable. But the biggest thing that I was waiting for is a web version, like laptop, computer, and Threads.net is live. So you can now thread from your laptop. So I think I will start probably trying to use Threads a little bit more. So if you want to follow at Craig_Hoffman, are you on there yet? Did you finally bite the bullet?
Yeah, I'm on it. I don't use it, though.
Okay.
I have it. I see people following me, but I don't use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on YouTube at Craig Hoffman, definitely follow along there for show highlights. If you missed the callers and I yelling at each other earlier, there's a good chance that some of the highlights of that will be on there soon. So people can subscribe there. And, of course, at the Team 980. Back to the phones, Anthony?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. 301-230-0980. That is the Ace Law listener line. Let's go to Jay. Jay, thanks for calling. Thanks for holding. You're on the Team 980.
What's going on, Craig? How you doing today, brother?
Doing well. Appreciate you calling in.
Hey, man, I listen to you every day. Anthony, you my man too, buddy. Let me start off by saying come support that good old City Life Raptors organization, the youth football group out here. We doing big things out here. Come check us out. But let me ask you this real quick, Craig. Everybody's they're up in arms about this quarterback situation, the third string quarterback, Freeman, whatever his name is. At the end of the day, we can bring him back this week. So I don't know why it's a big uproar about it. What my biggest thing is why are we not exposing Ron for what he said today in his press conference, to where he said that we cut everybody that we was going to cut yesterday, but when we made our cuts today, we're trying to bring them back to the practice squads. That seems to put a target on our back for who we want to put on our practice squad.
I mean, yes and no. Here's the thing I would say. One, thank you for the chuckle about Jake Fromm. Two, the reality is like teams don't act out of spite in the way that I think a lot of fans think they do. Like, teams mostly have their eye on their own paper, and they're trying to do what's in their own best interest. And stealing a Commander's practice squad player for funsies is not going to be in most teams' best interest. The practice squad is made up of two different types of players. One, they are players that are actually helpful to you this year that you might want to call up off the practice squad, or you're next in line for an injury that you think could help you. By nature, those players need to have been in your program and know the playbook, whether it's offense or defense, or know their role if they are called upon for special teams, if they get a Saturday night call-up before a game. And the players that have that knowledge are the ones that have been with you all spring when you've had a 90-man roster. So teams tend to bring back their own players. Like, they've already done the scouting. They pick the players they want in the spring. They train them up all spring, summer, and into this early, I guess it's not really early fall yet, but through the end of training camp. And then they figure out who the best are. They sign those to the 53, and then they bring the next best 16 back on practice squad. The other types of guys that you have on practice squad are developmental talents that you think could help you in the future, which, again, you've identified. And sure, could another team swoop in and take one or two of those guys? Absolutely. If you had a surplus at a certain position and you cut a good football player, like, Abdullah Anderson, who wore 92 for the Commanders all spring long and all summer long, if another team is short at defensive tackle, could they sign him to the active roster? Sure, but they were going to do that anyway, whether Ron was transparent about that or not. They're doing that because that's in their best interest, not because they wanted to pull a fast one on Ron Rivera and goof him for being honest in a press conference, and what I think is a fairly non-consequential answer.
Well, what I'm saying is not that they're my thing is, why would you say that? Like, if we're trying to get Fromm to get on the practice squad, and we're trying to keep him as our third quarterback because we don't have a third quarterback, which we need through history. Why don't we just keep our mouth closed and just stand Fromm quietly and ain't no eyes on Fromm?
Because every other team is not paying attention to a press conference. They're paying attention to the tape. Teams know what Jake Fromm is. And is there a team that could have watched him in the preseason, and especially if it's a team that runs a West Coast system that has some Andy Reid influence, a la this team, could they be like, yo, we want to sign that kid to the active roster. Like, we actually think he could eventually be our QB2 or whatever. Yeah, and at that point, that could happen, and the Commanders are going to be SOL. But it's not going to be because Ron said it in a press conference. It's going to be because the tape is already out there and some team makes that decision. And that's a risk that you have to live with, because the other alternative is keeping Fromm on the 53 and cutting someone somewhere else that is more likely to help you than your third quarterback is. Does that make sense?
I respect that. I do respect that. And Craig, I love your answer. I ain't even gonna lie. I respect that. But y'all come out there and support that City Life Raptors young crew coming up. They've been down to Florida 2 years in a row. Come on now, come support them City Life Raptors so we can get these kids in the high school and college.
Hey, that sounds great, man. Next time you call in, make sure to get Ant the information, and we'll see what we can do about that. Appreciate you calling in. Great call, great question. Let's go to Cliff to round out the calls for the hour. Cliff, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, Greg?
What's up, Cliff?
Greg? I was looking at the waiver wire just now, and if we don't get Jake Fromm back, based on what we knew about him from last year, could it be a possibility that the Commanders could go out and get Bailey Zappi, who was cut by the Patriots today? And I was looking on the waiver wire to see if that linebacker, Deion Jones from Atlanta, was on there, but he's not on that waiver wire, so either somebody picked him up or Atlanta picked him back up and cut somebody else in his place. And I'll sit back and listen.
Thanks, Cliff. Always appreciate the call. Deion Jones, I definitely saw him. The Panthers cut him. He was a former Atlanta linebacker, but he was in Carolina, so it might have just been looking in the wrong spot there. He's an interesting guy. Like, he's kind of in that Buffalo type of mold. He's one of the guys that almost originated that linebacker safety hybrid position. I don't know that they need another one of those because they've got Quan and they've got, like, Kalik is kind of their guy for that. And I don't know that at this stage Deion Jones coming in fresh is, without like any knowledge of the system or whatever, is better than Kalik Hudson in year 4. So but it's a name that I will say, Cliff, definitely caught my eye when he got cut as an interesting potential guy. Zappi is definitely interesting. By the way, so is Malik Cunningham. The Patriots also cut today. Super athlete, was quarterback at Louisville. But Zappi, like, here's the thing. Like, New England doesn't run a West Coast system. So while Zappi showed some moxie last year and, like, actually played better than Mac Jones for a lot of last season, he's limited on his talent. He's not like a future upside play. Like, he's Jake Fromm. So if you lose Jake Fromm, could you bring him in? I guess. But he doesn't know your system. Like, I would rather figure out who Kansas City cut. I would rather figure out who Jacksonville cut, Doug Peterson down there. I would rather get a guy who's got familiarity if all of a sudden the Jake Fromm nightmare that some people seem to be having comes true and he ultimately gets picked up somewhere else. Like, there's enough guys who have been running West Coast. Of course, Zappi would be interesting, but I think there are probably going to be better options for this team that have more knowledge of the offense right now. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, you will hear from Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew. Both spoke at 4 o'clock today, so you're getting in your car now, driving home, weren't quite out of work yet. We got you covered. The best of Rivera and Mayhew. Best is a relative term. The most interesting of Rivera and Mayhew next here on the Team 980.
Hey,
Say what you want about Jake. Like, this is speaking from my personal experience. When I got to play the last half of a preseason game, I knew I was going to dominate that son of a gun. Because there's a lot of dudes out there who don't play football, who aren't going to be playing football here in 3 weeks. And you can get after those guys. And I think there's a little bit of that going on. And I will say this team and the depth of this team also supports them at a really high level. Like, that third string offensive line did a great job. The third string wide receivers like Bryson Tremaine, Tinsley, name your guy. Those guys are good football players that deserve a shot at playing in the NFL. They've got guys that are good around him. And usually that's not the situation with a third quarterback, so they don't look as good. But here, that they did a great job of insulating him and supporting him, and he had a good performance.
I'll even put Fromm's name down over here in this other column as guys that we would like to keep on the practice squad, and we'll see 100%. How many we wind up with.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's a guy you want in your program, you want in your building. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that's what you want.
Ron's initial instinct was play Taylor for a series or two and then go to Sam. So you would have seen him. He just wouldn't have started the game, which, you know, look, Logan said at the time he understood it, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, Logan doesn't know what he's talking about. But I didn't subscribe to that theory. I will say that.
Yeah.
You know, you want to take the pressure off, like, what? No, I want to see if he can handle it. And that's kind of the point, is like, it again goes to the point that, like, the league needs a developmental system. It needs more opportunities for guys. But if he's in the building, like, to me, this is also another indictment. Sorry to kick a dead horse here, but, like, Scott Turner, what are you doing, man? Like, you're the one running the offensive meetings. You know, do you not give your young, potentially future quarterback? But it also goes to he's a fifth rounder. Like, how much you really invested in that guy? It's just, the thing is, like, sometimes things can be frustrating without anyone really being wrong. And I don't want to beat up on Rivera for being honest and open, because that does not incentivize him to keep being honest about decisions that he makes. Mm-hmm. And I, as someone who would like to know the truth, as a journalist / I think no fan wants to be lied to, like, I want him to keep telling the truth. Unfortunately, I think this truth does not reflect particularly well on him. I think he knows that, but it is a data point that if I'm Josh Harris, I'm considering as I look into the future. I'll put it that way. I think that was a fair, not too harsh take.
I think it was perfect, to be honest.
Perfect take. I did it again.
Great. Hey, look, not a lot of people can do what you do, Craig.
That's why you got to listen 4 to 7 each and every day. Some days we can't even get the sound on. Same show, hour and 45 minutes later.
Yep.
Perfect taste. Yes. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, the 53 is in. Now what about the practice squad? Logan and I made our predictions yesterday. Couple of things in there that I'll know before we play it for you that I guess got dated. Some injury updates and things that we learned, but mostly still interesting. And honestly, I think that was the most fun part of the podcast. The 53 was pretty easy. We ultimately, once Arma and Larson get back on, are going to have 52 of the 53 correct. The question is, what about the practice squad? We gave our best guess of the 16 players we think are going to be there, and we'll see. So with that, what did Ron Rivera and what did Martin Mayhew, the general manager of the Commanders, have to say about building the 53? They addressed the media about 2 hours ago in Ashburn and started off talking about the process of selecting the 53 that they ultimately did.
Very, very fluid process. Very fluid process. I mean, our 53 right now is what it is now. But it's an ongoing process. There'll be a big waiver wire out tonight. Our pro department will be scouring that. We'll be looking through that. We're always trying to get better. We're always trying to get better. Today is no different than any other day as far as that. And we'll be working toward that goal over the next week or so.
No, and I agree with what Martin said, because, again, it has to be fluid just because of the waiver wires, and just the communications that are going on right now.
So I think that's important. There's definitely already guys that we know are going to be IR'd, and we're imagining Fedarian Mathis is one of them. The question is who else? And obviously if someone else comes available that they like better, I think there are guys that are still on the bubble. I'll identify a few. Trent Scott, right, makes the team as the fourth tackle in part because Braden Daniels is banged up and has to go on IR. He'll miss the entire season as a rookie. But let's say there's a good fourth tackle, or someone else's, swing tackle that gets cut that the Commanders like. They could go out and sign that player and upgrade at their fourth tackle spot. That's a definitive possibility, I would say. That's not based off of any insider information or knowledge, just based off of the fact that Trent Scott kind of was a latecomer in camp and did a good job, but didn't do well enough that he blew people away, and he's been a practice squad player before. That's kind of who he is at the NFL level. He's a borderline NFL player, and when you're a borderline NFL player, sometimes you're on the wrong side of the border, if you will. You get shut out, and that's still a possibility. I think if someone impactful comes available at linebacker, the concerns about Cody Barton's play could potentially be influential there. Can they find someone who could potentially be an upgrade? Doubtful, because now you're talking about someone cutting a starter, and there's just not a ton of great linebackers around, but I think you have to poke around. I think at DB, you're set. I think along the D-line, and the only way I could see something happening is if someone they really like as a defensive tackle, like a 3 technique, becomes available, and they would move on from John Ridgway. But I think that Ridgway has been good enough to warrant being on the team. Now, once you're through the first wave of the waiver wire, does it become easier to stash a guy on practice squad? Absolutely. So if they find someone that they think can play for them week 1, do you sign that guy, IR Big Phil, cut Ridgway, bring Ridgway back on the practice squad, and know you have him as insurance? Like, that could be an interesting potential maneuver, as Ridgway hasn't been as good in camp as he was last season because he's working back from injury. You think that he's going to eventually knock off all the rust and he'll be the same guy and even better. He's a young player that's still growing. But what if he doesn't? Like, those are the kinds of contingency plans that we're talking about here. Offensively, obviously, if someone comes along at receiver that could step into your system, be reliable, and be a good punt returner, I don't know why that guy would be available, but if he is, could they move on from a Dax Milne or even a Mitchell Tinsley? Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Running back, they're set. Quarterback, they're set. Tight end is definitely a position to watch. There was, who was the former fourth rounder that Anthony, the Eagles, traded for today? Where was he from?
Albert O.
Yeah, Albert O.
Denver,
thank you. So the Eagles have already done this kind of thing. They make a move. Kickers got traded a bunch today. That was funky. But could a potential tight end who kind of fits their mold become available? I think that's an interesting position to potentially watch with Logan Thomas still not back from injury. Ultimately, they keep 7 receivers and 11 D linemen, a little heavier at both positions. Rivera on the thinking that went into that.
Well, I think the biggest one is we like the positions. I mean, these are some of the guys that really showed very well in camp, and that's a plus for us. And to feel that we're strong at those positions, I think it reflected just how good we feel about those players.
Makes sense to me. I mean, Mitchell Tinsley was the ultimate, fought his way onto the roster guy. And this happens. And I've seen it happen at receiver before. We joke about the Rashad Ross Award being the guy who just crushes it in the preseason and never sees the field really, or doesn't even make the team for the regular season. But there was one year that Ross was so good in the preseason that he forced his way onto the team. He had 100 yards receiving in the final preseason game. And you're just like, what more do you want from him? If you're really going to make this about competition and you're really going to make this about merit, what more could a guy like Mitchell Tinsley have done? He produced in practice. He produced in games. And that 89-yard performance in the preseason finale definitely gets him on this team. I think then on the defensive line side of things, I talked about this yesterday, but we're talking about a different caliber of cut if you got to make a decision there. And it seemed like James Smith-Williams and Casey Tuhill were the two guys on the block. F.A. Obata had secured his spot. But as KJ Henry and Andre Jones Jr. proved, no, we should be on the team. We're worth keeping on the actual 53. We're not practice squad guys as draft picks. We're not so bad that exposing us is going to lead to us coming back here on the practice squad. You got to keep us. Fine. If you cut James Smith-Williams and you cut Casey Tuhill, either one of them, you're cutting a borderline starter. Not a borderline NFL player. A borderline starter. You don't cut borderline starters. If James Smith-Williams has to play this entire year for you at defensive end, okay, the results are what they were last year because he's probably better in year 4 than year 3. And I think the same is true for Casey. James was the starter amongst that trio last year, played the most snaps, if I'm remembering correctly, between Obata, Tuhill, and Smith-Williams. I think Obata probably finished the season the best. He came on really, really strong at the end and continued that in the spring and summer, which is why he was the safest of the 3 as they had this 11-man stack along the defensive line. But you just don't cut players who could start for teams and be successful, and especially if you're starting next to John Allen and Daron Payne and across from Montez Sweat. The caliber of player you need there is one that's going to reliably do the job at a decent level, not a stud. Now, if you get Chase Young and he's a stud, that's how this defense is going to be top 3, but you could be top 10 with those other 2 dudes or those other 3 guys. And so cutting them made no sense. I'm glad they didn't do something that nonsensical, and we move forward with 11. For now, 10 probably with Big Phil, anticipating him going to the short-term injured reserve and missing the first part of the season. All right, Mayhew, talking about some of the harder decisions that he, Rivera, and the staffs had to make coming down to that 4 o'clock deadline.
Always very difficult to make some of those calls. I think defensive line-wise, I won't get into specific players, but that's an area that drives our whole defense. That's a priority for us. And, we felt like it's important to have depth there, and important to keep those young players that are playing well for us. Receiver-wise, kind of the same thing. Our top guys are really special, we think, and we think there's some young guys that can develop really well behind those. So
there you go. There's a mix of high-end talent, developmental talent, and I think reliable backups. Your Dax Milnes, your De'Ami Browns, your Byron Pringles, reliable backups. A guy like Tinsley, future project. Smith-Williams, Obata, Ridgeway, reliable backups. Fedarian to an extent, but certainly Jones Jr. and KJ Henry, future projects. But those are really important. There is no minor league system. You have to draft and develop while you're moving. Guys got to grow up while they're on the trip. And sometimes that involves being thrown in to the fire a little bit. Ideally, those guys don't see the field a ton this year, and they just get to learn and be in the meeting rooms and practice against an NFL caliber offensive line all year. And that will get them better and ready for next season, because Smith-Williams, Obata, and Tuhill, not to mention Sweat and Young, are all free agents, and they're going to need those guys to step up next year in order to have some continuity when they figure out who they're going to bring back, because they're not going to be able to bring back all of them. Speaking of guys who perhaps are a little surprising to make the team, but certainly could benefit from the practice, Curtis Hodges makes the team. Perhaps the single biggest surprise. Rivera talked about him making the team.
Well, he really didn't practice last year. That's part of the problem. And so when you look at it for us, that's a rookie right there. I mean, this is a young man that's got a tremendous skill set. His physical traits are very difficult to find. And, just getting an opportunity to practice this year completely was a good thing for him. And so, again, we feel that this is a young man that has an ability, and we'll see how it grows and develops. But players like that are very difficult to find.
He's right. And that ultimately is why, there's only so mad I can get about this. The thing I hate about Hodges making the team, to the extent that I don't even want to use that word, the thing that is off kilter about Hodges making the team, because I'm not going to hate any guy getting a job, especially a talented guy. Good for him. But it doesn't feel like he earned it based off the performance. He earned it based off his potential. And perhaps, and this is where it is important to remember, for as much as we see, even fans and media that go to practice every day, we're not in the meeting rooms. And if he has shown a proclivity to learn and not make the same mistake twice and get better in the meeting rooms, and he looks like he is developing on a track that they like, I can't argue with this. There is more to developing as a football player than the ultimate production. It is about process, not results. And if the process is on track, even if the results are a little bit behind, you might pay off in a future starter, and potentially a really good future starter in Curtis Hodges. It's worth the risk for now. And if you have to play him, he does know the playbook and all that kind of stuff well enough, and he can execute the stuff that it's not going to be as good as Logan Thomas. It's not going to be as good as probably Armani Rogers would have been. It won't be as good as Cole Turner, but if he's got to play some, he's going to be okay. And so with that, and Thomas banged up, and I would say a question mark not only for week one, but for the rest of the season. Can he stay healthy? I get going a little deeper at tight end. I also do wonder, though, if he's not on the team by Friday. That if they wanted to keep him initially, keep him away from the big, giant waiver wire, and then swap him and Alex Arma, who did not make the team, and who you'll hear more about from Martin Mayhew coming up in just a few minutes. But Hodges, based off the results, no. Hate that. Where a guy like Tinsley, based off the results, makes it. Love that. But there's more to it than what meets the eye for those of us in the media. And I'm just going to have to say, I don't want to say defer, but I guess the rationale is he's done enough stuff away from the cameras, away from the fans, away from the media, that keeping him around with that massive amount of talent is worth the risk in their eyes. What about Mitchell Tinsley? What about Tyler Larson getting cut? And what about those comments that Ron made to Albert Breer about Sam Howell? All were asked about. You'll hear the answers next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, live on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube, and now streaming live on Twitter as well. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the team at 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Who's going to make the practice squad? Now that we know the 53, Logan Paulson and I give our best guess coming up at the bottom of the hour. A little Take Command Tuesday. And by the way, you should definitely subscribe to Take Command so you can get Logan's stories from the sidelines. Of course, he was the sideline reporter for the TV broadcast. Had some fun stories to share. That'll be out tomorrow morning. Take 5, the 5-minute edition of Take Command, which, Anthony, I know this will absolutely stun you, is typically about 8 minutes. Never Take 5, 5-minute edition of Take Command. That's the slogan. Never actually 5 minutes long.
What's been the closest time to the 5 minutes?
I think our first one, because I was like, 5 minutes and we are done. And now it's like every time I look up, I'm like, that was 8.
So is it you talking too much, or is it Logan talking too much? Or is it just great analysis?
I think it's just great content. We don't want to short the people.
Yeah, of course.
If it was Russell, how long would Take 5?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know, because he does 3 up, 3 down. That's only 3 things, and sometimes it takes 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes, 12. So
if it was Sheehan, how long would Take 5 be?
He might break Rooster's record. I don't know.
Solid 43 minutes at least.
No question. No, all disregard for the clock. Yes.
Yeah. Some long segments. That's all I'm saying. Quality content all around.
Great content, though. Great content.
See, the Junkies have a cheat code. They've got television segments. They cannot go long.
Oh, yeah, yep.
It's not discipline. It's imposed barriers. That would be a fun one. I should ask JP that one day. JP, if you guys didn't have TV and you didn't have to be structured on a clock, how long would y'all just go 4 hours without a break? Like, would you just do the whole show and then be like, all right, now play all the ads? They got 4 dudes.
Yeah.
It's cheating. Yeah. I'm like, tap me out, coach. I need a breather. All right. Speaking of coach, Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew spoke this afternoon about the Commanders' 53-man roster, which includes Mitchell Tinsley, wide receiver out of Penn State, makes it as an undrafted free agent. Rivera explained why.
I think the biggest thing with Mitchell was it was from day one. You just saw it. Whether it was when we started back in OTAs on the rookie camps and all that stuff that we had, and then we saw it from the beginning of training camp, and he just progressed and progressed and progressed, and he was a young man that we really feel pretty confident about his growth and development.
And I think he's a guy that, in an ideal world, maybe you sneak through the practice squad, but you have to make these risk assessment calls where. Are you willing to risk it? Like, if you risk him, what are you actually losing? And I think with Tinsley, and also, if we expose him, are we going to lose him? And I think with Tinsley, the answer was yes, and enough that it's worth it. I think they can help, that they think he can help them right now. And Anthony, we were out at camp a bunch. This dude flashed. I think this dude was just one of the most consistent receivers in camp, not explosive as Terry and Jahan or Curtis. He's not doing it against the same competition as those guys, but he was consistent. And I think that ultimately gets you to where he is. And, by the way, I think this also opens up a spot on the practice squad for Bryson Tremaine, which I think is very exciting as well, because I think he could be a future player for them.
Yeah, I think there are a ton of, Mitchell Tinsleys in the league in general. So I think him making the roster and them not wanting to, chance it was smart on that. And I think of a guy like Greg Dortch, who's out in Arizona. I think they're very similar kinds of players. Now, Greg Dortch is in a better situation where he actually can play. It's just more so Mitchell's in a crowded wide receiver room and doesn't necessarily have the same luxury as a Greg Dortch.
No. And that's the thing is, would there be another team that's yo, that dude can play for us right now? And Washington's yeah, we don't want to mess with that.
Exactly.
But, week 3, could he get released and put back on the practice squad? Potentially. You just want to avoid this. You kind of want to try to do it when teams are more in flux, right? Because teams are always paying attention. And I think that's, a misnomer too. They have entire personnel departments whose job it is to watch the rest of the league. And by the way, Commanders, I believe he's the director of pro personnel, or is he director of player personnel? No, he's director of player personnel, so he's in charge of everybody, but that includes the pro scouts. Eric Stokes is going to speak tomorrow to the media at 9 a.m., so I don't think the Junkies will probably take that press conference live, but we'll certainly have the best of it here on the afternoon show. So, like, you can't necessarily sneak guys, but what you can do is try to cut them at a time when not as many teams are looking. And, looking because their rosters are set, not because they're not paying attention. And I think that could happen to Mitchell Tinsley, but I also would predict that he's going to be here the entire year, and that he might make a couple catches this year. But I also think for being blunt about it, I don't know that he's going to have more catches than he is games inactive unless he gets his special teams, his special teams ability up. So we'll see. Surprise cut of the day, probably Tyler Larson. I think a lot of people thought he was definitely going to make it. They've not been shy about wanting to keep 3 centers. He is a guy they want to bring back, but they did make the cut. Here's why, according to the men in charge.
Well, I think the biggest thing more than anything else is we like the position flex that the young man gives us. He's a solid, stout guy who we feel really good about right now. And, as Martin stated, this to the question, this is fluid right now, and we're not done with anything potentially.
Yeah, the young man being Ricky Stromberg, he offers more. He offers guard and center as opposed to just center. Larson offers just center, and while they've had him as kind of a flex guy in the past, I think they like Stromberg a lot more at both positions, especially though at guard. And so Stromberg gets the call, and I do think Larson will probably wind up coming back because there's not a huge market for 32-year-old centers with no position flex and an injury history. As for Alex Arma, I think this one is surprising, but I would be even more surprised if he's not back unless someone claims him on waivers, which there's just not a lot of teams that have. Let me put it this way. There's not a lot of teams that use fullbacks, and the teams that use fullbacks aren't in need of them because they have their guy. So the Commanders should be able to get Arma back. Here's Martin Mayhew on that process.
Alex has been a good player for us over the last couple of years. We've had good conversations about him. There is value with having a fullback, and again, very fluid situation right now for where we are. I think we're carrying 4 tight ends right now. We'll see how that all plays out.
Oh, did Martin give us a little hinty hint? We'll see what happens tomorrow. By the time, I do think it's interesting that Stokes' press conference happens at 9. Waiver wire is not till noon when it's up, and so the practice squad stuff will come after that. Expect probably, maybe even on our show tomorrow, maybe a little bit before the practice squad to be announced. Last but not least, because I promised it. Actually, you know what, Anthony, I promised it, and I'm gonna be a bad radio host here, and I'm gonna say if you want to hear Ron talk about his comments to Albert Breer on Sam Howell, you're going to have to stay tuned for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones. So we will play it for you, just we're out of time right now. So we will do that coming up before the end of the hour. Coming up next, Logan Paulson's thoughts on who's going to make the practice squad. He enjoyed this exercise more than he did doing the 53. So Take Command Tuesday next to wrap us up here on The Hoffman Show.
You can listen to the
Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 53-man roster is set for now. We've been covering it all show long. Next up, practice squad. Logan and I talked about it yesterday on Take Command when we made our predictions. We're going to share that with you in just a moment. A couple of news and notes items to, if I can remember correctly, cover our bases as we hit play on this. Brandon Dillon is a guy that we talked about, the tight end. He ultimately gets IR'd. He might be waived with an injury settlement and allowed to pursue other opportunities. But we talked about him versus Curtis Hodges for the practice squad. Ironically, Hodges makes the 53 and Dillon not around. So that's going to be interesting to see if they keep another tight end on the practice squad or if they ultimately cut Hodges and then move him there. So that is something to be considered. We did not know about Jonathan Williams' injury when we get to the running back section. So we should, if we had, we would have mentioned Derek Gore, who's a prime candidate there. We did talk about Aaron Montero, who was cut yesterday. He's not going to be on the practice squad, at least the way that Ron described it today. The guys that they cut yesterday, they're going to let go. Guys they cut today, are mostly the guys they're going to bring back. He was a yesterday cut. So that's interesting. Same with Milo Eifler. Other than that, I think our predictions are still pretty much alive. And ultimately, I think the guys that we predicted, most of them are going to wind up on the practice squad. So, that's the news and notes off the front. Without further ado, here is Logan and I breaking it down on a Take Command Tuesday. Take Command podcast, wrapping it up here with Logan Paulson. I'm Craig Hoffman, and that leaves, Logan, what we've been hinting at all show long, which in some ways it feels like we're more excited to do than we are at the roster, in part because there's more intrigue here. Yeah. So let's do it. I'm going to make a little column out wide here for the practice squad. And I'm just going to start it up top. That way I can go line 1 through 16. And
let's do that.
That track's easy. All right, Fromm for sure.
Yeah. If they can get him there, I think they can. But that's an if. There will be a practice squad quarterback, and I would like to be Fromm.
Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna just do that.
Look at you, this formatting.
I know. The YouTube audience is excited. The radio or the podcast audience is like, why are they delaying? It's because I'm trying to make this legible. Okay, so Fromm for sure. I think one of the running backs.
I think Williams. For sure. I think Williams.
You think Williams over Patterson?
I just think he's got more game experience, and again, in a situation, an environment where you need a guy to play football. Like I love Patterson. I think he had an excellent preseason. I think he'll be playing. He'll be on a team somewhere. But
he should be.
I think
like
Williams
he's a guy that could show up in week 12 in Las Vegas and have 100 yards, and you're like, oh, sure.
Yeah.
And everyone will be mad here, but it just is what it is on that side of it.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to double check on Jonathan Williams.
He does have experience. He is one of those veteran guys.
Yeah.
So
he's played enough football that he's experienced 7 years. So he's one of our 6 guys. So I'm going to put a little asterisk by him.
Oh, look at you.
All right. Then you get to the tight end spot. I think you keep Dillon and Hodges.
You keep both, you think?
I mean,
you get to that. I think you get to that O line, that D line, and you're going to be like, we can
never mind.
One of them. I think so.
You're Mr. Tight End. Who do you want?
I think Dillon has had a better camp, but you keep a practice squad tight end because you think that one day they could start, and this is a coin flip to me. It really depends on how the guys in the room feel about him. I've been so disappointed with Hodges, just because I thought it was like when Armani got hurt, like it was there for him. They wanted to keep him, and he just didn't make enough plays. And Dillon is a guy who, like Ron spoke very highly of. He was like, he's just done what we asked him to do. He doesn't make the same mistake twice, and there's an element of professionalism there. I think he counts against the veterans. I think he's played.
I think he played only one game.
Okay, so he doesn't.
In 19, 3 games in 20, 1 game in 21. So he doesn't count. Here's the other thing. Here's my counter argument to that. Is your project guy is still kind of Armani a year from now.
That's a good point.
And so if you need someone to come in
and play
and help you this year, Dillon is more reliable than Hodges.
It seems that way.
And it's kind of like, your boy, Samis last year.
Yeah.
Like, how many projects do you want in one room? And
well, it's funny because I actually think if you needed Hodges to play as like your why, I think he could do it. I think I think he's okay in the run game. I think the thing that I'm waiting for is the pass game stuff. Yeah, so maybe it is Dylan. Maybe you're right.
Let's go with Dylan. Can't believe I just convinced you on a tight end.
Yeah, no, but
the comments are going to be on fire. Just let Logan do the tight ends.
In my heart, though, I agree with you because like Hodges is not. He didn't do what he should have done. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So that gets us to the O line. And by the way, just feels worth mentioning. We didn't need Arma's spot. So that's one to watch for sure. But turns out we didn't need the Alex Arma spot. He can just make the roster on the front end. Okay. Scott.
I think Scott
as your fourth tackle. He seems like a roster type of like he's on the practice squad. He's more of like a reserve team than a project.
Correct.
I think Brooks is project potential future starter at guard.
I think so too. I think, and especially because they gave him a little bit of extra money to sign. I think they want him around. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get him to practice squad. Because from what I understand, in talking with his agent, there was a lot of interest in him. So if they can get him, great. I think they'll try really hard to keep him. So I would expect that to be the case. And then of these next two guys, Laufenberg or Montero, I think you go Montero. I think they like Laufenberg a lot, but I think Montero's been a better player. And then do you keep 4 guys? Like how many? What is that? That's 7?
That's 3 so far, and 7 total.
Gosh, that's tough because I really thought Jones Smith had an excellent camp, and I think he's got a lot of potential. He is 28 years old though, so that's kind of late in the game for a project. So I think you probably go Laufenberg.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so you would keep then for Laufenberg. Okay.
Yep.
Kaz Allen for sure.
Yep. Tinsley.
I think Tinsley for sure.
I love Bryson Tremaine.
I know you do.
I love him. Well, I mean, that'd be 10. Yeah, that's tough. Do you keep?
Unless you're going to be really thin on the practice squad on defense. On the D line, you probably would be.
This is really interesting, I think, because like this is how it goes in the meeting. Like you get coaches standing up on tables for guys, and the only thing I wonder is there someone in the building that's going to stand on a table for him? And I don't know.
For Tremaine?
Yeah, for Tremaine. Like I would, if I was in there after watching the preseason, after watching practice, after watching how he handled himself, I would stand on the table for him and say, I want this guy in the building. But is Katzer going to do it? Is, the receiver coach going to do it? Is Ron going to do it? Is EB going to do it? I don't know, because I think you ultimately need someone to be like, we need this dude on the roster on practice squad. And I don't know if he has that guy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for me. I would be super sad if that happened because I think he's a guy that I would, if Logan Paulson is the GM of this team, he's on 9, he's on 7 days a week and twice on Sunday kind of thing. But yeah,
you're not willing to give up Allen or Tinsley, are you?
I might. So I think I've been a little disappointed with Allen. I think people like him because of the return ability, but I think you've got a guy who's Cam Sims. He's going to be a good pro. He's going to make plays when he gets in there. He's going to play teams for you and have a nice, 7-8 year career just because of the professionalism. And I don't want that guy to walk out the room. And I know people are really high on Tinsley, but I think the physical skill set of Tremaine I'm a little bit higher on. But again, like this is the toughest decision I think here. And
if I'm in the room and you tell me you're willing to sacrifice Allen, I tell you that's our future starting punt returner, and he's going to score touchdowns and win us football games with big explosive plays.
And you know what I'm going to say to you is like I haven't seen him consistently catch punts in his whole career. So
because he hasn't had that many opportunities.
Right.
Like,
but you want me to argue with you? That's what I'm going to say.
Right. No, 100%. And I'm going to pull up the broadcast of Brian Mitchell telling the punt return story and be like, hey, eventually this dude figured it out and he was pretty good at it. Let's give him some more time to learn, and he's going to catch 1,000 punts a day. That would actually probably take a very long time. He's going to catch 100 punts a day.
Sure.
And we're going to wear out the jugs machine. All right. So defense, practice squad guys. Who on the defensive line? I think Anderson for
sure.
And then
Benny.
Patoe?
Yeah, I think Benny.
And then do you go? Oh man, we're running out of spots quick.
I know. I don't know that crazy, right?
I think when you keep the extra edge guys on the regular roster, you can afford to not have a backup.
I agree.
Like KJ Henry's your active practice squad guy.
Correct. Yes.
So sorry, William Bradley King, great dude. not going to make it.
It had a good preseason, but that again,
Yeah.
when you draft guys at the position, like that's tough, So
All right, and then you've got linebacker. You keeping both Eifler and Harris?
probably because you're only keeping 6 active.
And that leaves
2 spots,
15, 14, 3 spots, 14, 15, 16.
Gosh, that's tough, dude. This is harder than the roster for real.
I know you love Smith, so I'm going to put Kendall Smith on.
Well, I think just because when people mention him, like in the pre-draft process, people really liked him. So,
Yeah.
and I think he's played well enough. I think he's got some upside, So, and then as a DB, who do you keep? You need to keep an extra DB just in case someone gets hurt. Or,
For sure.
Corner.
So, do you want Wild Goose, Whiteside, or Whitaker? I mean, you can keep 2 here, unless you want to circle back and you get your guy Tremaine and you keep one and Jack's just mad. Hey, you got your 11 D lineman, but I'm getting the extra practice squad guys.
Yeah, I think it's Wild Goose, even though he had a hard time just because he's played. I mean, what do you think, Craig? Like, Whitaker's been good, man. But he this is again.
I think Whiteside had the best camp of the 3.
What number is he?
23.
He did have a good training camp, actually. So I think it's between Wild Goose and Whiteside for me, and maybe you keep both of them.
Well, we have the spot, so I would say we probably do that. Wild Goose is a guy who you trust more in the nickel. Whiteside, you trust more outside.
That's 16.
And that's your 16.
Wow, that was tough. I'm so sad Bryson Tremaine didn't make it, but that's life. So
you can make you're the GM of our team. You want to make one last second call?
Who else I would bump? You are keeping 4 linemen, which I think they did the same thing last year, so that makes sense they would do that. I want Tinsley. Allen is the only one I'm a little bit like, meh, but again, I think I understand why people are excited about him.
Can't believe you're doing that to your fellow Bruin.
I mean, I like him. I think, but he in terms of
kicked
guys,
out of the Alumni Association.
In terms of guys who played really, really well the second half of training camp, you're gonna have a harder time finding a guy better than Bryson Tremaine. He had an excellent 4th quarter against Baltimore. He scored a touchdown last night, or whatever night that was, Saturday. We're all playing together. So I don't know who else I would take off here. Maybe I'd take one of these DBs off, and put him on.
Wild Goose, yeah.
But I would, I'm mad if I'm the receiver coach. If Logan Paulson's a receiver coach, but obviously I'm not.
So. We'll see what old Bobby Ingram's what he's thinking. How much slate he's got in the room.
I don't know. Like when you talk to people, there's not like this like light that lights up. Like people like him, but you gotta love him because that's what we're talking about, right? Like, do I love him enough to be like, hey,
standing on a table?
Yes, right. And I don't know.
I love that visual too. Just 50-year-old former football players standing on tables.
This is the guy. Yeah. So
love it. It's like, hey man, the depth chart's over there. It's not on the table. It's not. We're all okay. So that's it. That's our 53. That's our 16-man practice squad. Let's go back to Ben Standig, the king of cut down days Twitter. I haven't seen anything else get posted yet in terms of
that stuff.
And in terms of cut that. By the way, I hated cut down days beat reporter. Here, let me get you Ben's, and then I'll tell you why. DeMarcus Fields, DB, has been released. DJ Sturgis, Lou. Yep. So these are like the down roster DBs. Isaiah back and back and with here and do. Standig's got great relationships with agents, so he's a great guy to follow. Kime, obviously, the post, Nikki and Sam, everybody does a really good job with all this stuff and doing a professional job on a tough day. But the 53 is coming, practice squad is coming, and we'll talk about it in our next pod. So that's it, and that's all for this very long podcast. And we'll see you next time on Take Command. the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube and Twitter at the Team 980. You missed any part of the show, catch it on the podcast by rewinding in the Odyssey app or highlights on demand, including me fighting callers earlier about Dax Milne, which is not what I thought would define today's show, but somehow suddenly did, on YouTube at Craig Hoffman. Time to wrap things up. Time for real things, real people said, into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Almost had a math error there, Anthony, but we solved it. We solved it. That's why you watch the stream for the secret hand signals every day. All right. We promised this one earlier in the show, ran out of time, so let's get to it now. Albert Breer had a conversation with Ron Rivera that went a little viral yesterday. I know the Junks talked about it this morning, as did everybody else. We talked about it yesterday, that Ron wishes he would have played Sam Howell more last year. Easy to say in hindsight. The way it was written, it was like full of regret. But Matt Harris asked Ron today about those comments to Breer, and Ron clarified.
That's hindsight. I mean, the thing that we did see, though, obviously was, his abilities, but we were also in the middle of a run. We were trying to get into the playoffs, and we had some things going our way. So, the timing of it all was just hard for us.
That is correct. It has been correct. It will always be correct. Yes, you wish things could have been differently, and I think that is sometimes decisions that you make as an organization, but this is also where the ownership thing came in. Not having a steady ship, or this is also why, by the way, you have a GM that's the most powerful person in the organization, not the head coach, because the GM could have stepped in and been like, look, even if we make the playoffs, we're not doing anything. Like, we need to figure out if this kid's the guy. That way we can make a decision of how aggressive we want to be this offseason at quarterback. Let's get him some snaps if you think he's remotely ready. And they would have been like, okay, let's do it. And they would have figured it out sooner. So it is his job to know. It is frustrating, but I don't think it's like a fireable offense. And I don't think it's let's not make a bigger deal out of it than it is. It was unfortunate in a million different ways, but they got to the right choice. At least that's what it seems, because it seems like Sam Howell could be a pretty good NFL quarterback. This one, wish we had gotten to it yesterday. Didn't, but we get to it today. Paul George, apparently very talented impressionist.
Give us Charles, D. We know you got Charles.
Jackie, to think about it, let me tell you. See, back when I played, you almost had to chuck a guy when he got hot or fouled him and put him on his ass. But these guys now are just too soft.
That's a good one.
He's good at it.
He's good at it. Troy got me crying.
It's pretty good. I feel like when a lot of people do a Chuck impression, it's almost cartoonish. Like, Danny's is perfect. Danny just touches the line of, like, cartoonish while still being hilarious but also accurate, to the point that if you close your eyes and you don't know who's talking, it kind of sounds, you're like, is that Chuck or is that Danny? Like, his is great, which is why Danny got chosen to do the FanDuel commercial with Charles when he played young Charles. But I think what I appreciate about Paul George's is that actually is part of what makes a great impression. The content is so good. It's not just the voice. The content is excellent here, Anthony.
Craig, I would love to hear you try to do the Charles Barkley. Paul George did a fantastic job. Am I putting you on the spot, Craig? Are you nervous, Craig? Are you scared?
No, I'm not scared. I will tell you it's not going to be good. It's somewhere in this. It's like, well, you see, we got to, it's like somewhere up there. You got to do kind of a funky thing with your throat.
Yeah.
Back in my day,
it's not too far. It's way better than I could do, Craig.
I haven't worked on it in a while. The thing that I appreciate about PG's, though, is like Barkley's country. Like, Barkley's from Leeds, Alabama. And that is an element that I had not considered in my Barkley impression the very rare times that I've even messed with it. Oh, no, see, Kenny. But, like, you got to, that's the one word I can kind of do is Kenny. Because that's the word that we've all heard more than anything else. Ernie, Kenny. But, like, there's a point in that impression. Can you play, like, that middle chunk again or see if you can find it off air real quick where he gets real Southern with it? It's so good.
See, back when I played.
That's it right there. Back when I played. But, like,
back when I played.
See, he gets the Southern drawl down. I can't do the impression and the drawl at the same time. That's impressive.
I can't do either.
Let's hear yours. You put me on the spot.
Craig, oh my God.
Just give me like a, oh, Kenny, come on.
Oh, Kenny, come on.
Ours are more neighbors than I want it to be.
Man, no, yours is better than mine. Mine stinks.
Yeah, but like, who is my house closer to your house or is my house closer to Danny's house?
Your house is closer to Danny's house.
Really?
Yeah, I personally think.
Okay. I think you're giving me way too much credit. But you want to know what? I'm going to take it. Sam Fortier on the show tomorrow, 5 o'clock, reaction to Eric Stokes' press conference as well. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening and watching here on the Team 980.
The Kevin Sheehan Show.